And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Welcome. Welcome to Benchley Night. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my goodness. Me and Faceplant are not getting along. We're not getting along at all. Well, here's what's happening. I use this platform called StreamYard. Betty Sue introduced me to StreamYard a few years ago. And StreamYard is a wonderful, very flexible, very intuitive platform for doing live streams or recording yourself on devices. Faceplant does not. It's all of a sudden become allergic. It's all of a sudden become allergic to StreamYard, and when you attempt to link the StreamYard studio to Faceplant, it all of a sudden decides that you are something fraudulent. So I have been told that I am not myself by Faceplant today. So I'm going to try to figure out if I can transition over to basically broadcasting on YouTube and getting the word out on my Substack. Oh, the terminology, ladies and gentlemen, the terminology. Well, Betty Sue says she's sorry she steered me wrong. You never steer me wrong, Betty Sue. Betty Sue, ladies and gentlemen, Betty Sue has just, she's been on the James McMurtry tour all this month. And then she had some pre-existing dates at a little festival in Effingham, Illinois, the Moccasin Creek Festival, and some dates with Chris Smither. And so she left the McMurtry tour after Portland, Oregon. She flew to Chicago. She played Madison, Evanston with Smither, then a house concert last night. Today, the festival in Effingham. Tomorrow, she flies back to rejoin the McMurtry tour in Salt Lake City. And she is, ladies and gentlemen, she does get tomorrow night off. But she is thinking of going to the zoo because they have red pandas there, which is a very good reason to go to the zoo, I do think. But anyway, so everyone should say hi to Betty Sue out there on the road. KS, John Wilhelm, Tracy Hunt, and Bob Sharp. Okay, we've got people watching. I guess you're all on YouTube. Because the only two places that Faceplant would let me broadcast was YouTube. Well, they didn't have a choice about YouTube, but also the Roots, Rails, and Rambles Facebook page, which annoys Sarah, I think, because I used to broadcast on the Roots on the Rails Alumni Association page, but Faceplant does not allow that anymore. So now it's just the general Roots, Rails, and Rambles page, which, as Sarah points out, a lot of people have no idea who the hell I am or why I'm reading Robert Benchley. But I'm not reading Robert Benchley tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I am reading the conclusion of Mystery Yarn by Robert McCloskey from Homer Price. A wonderful, wonderful story. And Carol Fulkerson says she's on YouTube. John Wilhelm is on YouTube. Tracy Hunt is on the YouTube. KS is on the YouTube. Welcome, YouTubers. Welcome. There, I just thought of a new. We're all tubers here. Nobody here but us tubers. Anyway, so there was no liberal snowplowing do-gooder beneficiary this week because I was dealing with the fallout from Faceplant, but there will be again soon. The unidentified unglet still gives a shout out to everyone who is watching tonight, and including my very out there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He even emailed me. He texted me right before this saying he understood my problems with the Faceplant, and he was still going to tune in one way or the other. Oh my goodness, my very, very, very tall cousin out there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Mr. Nat Hunter and his wonderful wife, Elise. But all of you who are joining us, thank you. Oh, that's very abrupt. Let's use the other unidentified ungulate. Oh, that's much more adorable, don't you think? Yeah. Anyway, thank you all so much for being here. Now, as you all may remember, last week we had part 1 of Mystery Yarn. And in that, Homer Price, our protagonist from Centerburg, Ohio, he goes over every Sunday afternoon to help his uncle Telemachus collect string and tie his huge ball of string. And at the same time, the sheriff and Homer's friend Freddie helps the sheriff tie string to his huge ball of string, because both those men are desirous of the hand of Miss Ida B. Terwilliger, who invites them over different days of the week for chicken dinners. And they make a gentleman's agreement to go to the county fair and unroll their balls of string, and the one with the biggest ball will informally be the victor and win the hand of Miss Ida B. Terwilliger. Now, you might say, there's not a lot of female self-determination in there. Well, just what happened last week, right at the culmination of what I read. Miss Ida B. Terwilliger showed up with the judge, and the judge says it has turned out that Miss Ida B. Terwilliger has also been saving string for years, and she too would like to be part of the contest at the fairgrounds. Well, this has certainly thrown a spanner into the works as far as the sheriff and Uncle Telemachus are concerned, but we'll take it up from there, right? I'll reread the last few words, the last few paragraphs of where we were last week. Okay. If I win this here contest, this is Uncle Telemachus speaking, the sheriff has to promise to spend his Thursday afternoons out of town and give Miss Terwilliger the chance to make up her mind to marry me. Well, said the sheriff, in that case, if I win, you'll have to leave town on Sundays and give Miss Terwilliger a chance to make up her mind to marry me. It's a deal, said Uncle Telly, and he and the sheriff shook hands for the first time in years, just to clinch the bargain, of course. Very well, gentlemen, crooned the judge. I shall judge this contest, and at our earliest convenience, we will draw up a set of rules pertaining. Good day, Telemachus. Goodbye, Telly, said the sheriff. Sorry I can't stay, but I got an appointment. Uncle Telly slammed the door on the sheriff and went back to tying knots. We'll see, he said, and he pulled the next knot so hard that he broke the string. Yes. I read a bunch of this. I'm a little bit further on, but we'll have it. What the hey, ladies and gentlemen, what the hey? Golly, Uncle Telly, said Homer, that's going to be a swell contest. I hope you win the prize. Huh. Prize or no prize, we'll see who's got the most, said Uncle Telly. And Miss Terwilliger will get a chance to make up her mind. That woman certainly can cook. Then he busied himself with his knots, and he said, now mind you, Homer, wind it tight. In the Friday night edition of the Centerburg Bugle, Homer read a long article on the county fair and a special announcement about the contest to determine the world's champion string saver, and then the rules that Judge Shank had drawn up. Each contestant may appoint an assistant to help with the maneuvering of his ball of string. The balls of string shall be unwound, i.e. rolled around the county fair racetrack in a counterclockwise direction, starting from the judge's booth in front of the main grandstand. The ball of string reaching around the racetrack the greatest number of times shall be regarded as the winning string, and that string's owner shall be declared winner of the prize and of the title of World Champion String Saver. The string shall be unwound for 2 hours every afternoon the week of the fair, starting at 2:00. Homer read the rules and noticed that nothing was mentioned about the gentleman's agreement between the sheriff and Uncle Telly, but that sort of news travels fast in a town the size of Sunderburg. It was not long before practically everybody knew that the winner was supposed to have the hand of Miss Terwilliger in marriage. Homer decided to go past Uncle Telly's house and see what he thought about the rules. Homer could not help wondering what a woman who could cook fried chicken so well and who was as clever as Miss Terwilliger would do if she happened to hear about the agreement. Homer found Uncle Telly trying to figure out, I read almost all of this, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you don't mind. I hope you don't mind that we're having additional rereading. You can choose whether I read it better last week or this week. How many miles of string were wound on his ball? He was multiplying 3.1416 by the diameter, and after multiplying by several figures, he asked Homer how many feet in a mile. 5,280, said Homer. Then Uncle Telly multiplied by 4. Then he turned to Homer and said, I figure there's enough string to go around that racetrack 100 times. Yep, 25 miles of string. Just let the sheriff beat that if he can. Look, Uncle Telly, here comes the judge. Here's where I thought we were. Sorry. Everybody okay there? Yep. Okay. Everybody seems okay out there in internet land. Look, Uncle Telly, here comes the judge and the sheriff again. And look who's with them, Mr. Terwilliger. Uncle Telly opened the door before the judge had a chance to knock, and the judge puffed in, followed by the sheriff and Miss Terwilliger. Good day, Telemachus. Well, we have a new contestant for the title of World Champion String Saver, puffed the judge. Miss Terwilliger blushed and she giggled while Uncle Telly backed around to the other side of the room and raised his eyebrows at the sheriff in a way that asked, Did you tell her about this agreement? The sheriff shrugged his shoulders and wiggled his mustache that showed he was just as puzzled as Uncle Telemachus. Miss Terwilliger, if she did know about the agreement, was not admitting it. Isn't it wonderful, she said to Uncle Telemachus and the sheriff, that we have so much in common? Yes, she said, I've been saving string for the past 15 years. All of the colored yarns and odds and ends from knitting classes. I have a beautiful ball of yarn, all colors of the rainbow. Oh, splendid, said the judge, rubbing his hands together. Simply splendid, Miss Terwilliger. But Judge, interrupted Uncle Telly anxiously, do you think, said the sheriff, nudging the judge and winking frantically, that a woman should enter into a thing of this sort? A thing of this sort? Oh, it's splendid, continued the judge, ignoring these interruptions. The American female is beginning to find her rightful place in the business and public life of this nation. The sheriff and Telemachus and I deeply, deeply appreciate your public spirit, Miss Terwilliger, and I am sure that the county fair will be an unprecedented success. Come, Judge, said Miss Terwilliger with a smile. I must get back to my knitting shop. Goodbye, Sheriff. Goodbye, Telemachus. I'll see you on Sunday. After the judge and Mr. Terwilliger were gone, the sheriff and Uncle Tully each accused the other of telling about the agreement. They finally calmed down and decided that the judge had double-crossed them with his fancy speech about women's rights. But Uncle Tully, said Homer, there couldn't be 3 balls of string in the world as large as yours and the sheriff. You're wrong, son, said the sheriff with a sigh. Her ball of string is bigger than mine. She's a clever woman, son. She's a very clever woman. If she wins, said Uncle Telemachus gloomily, we'll be right back where we started from, waiting forever for her to make up her mind. And that's where I stopped reading last week. So all of you probably have this memorized by now. 16 minutes in, and I'm still just now getting the new part. During the next week, the whole county got excited about the contest to determine the world champion string saver. Everybody started saving string for their favorite contestant. The ladies in Mr. Terwilliger's knitting classes reported that Mr. Terwilliger was knitting a brand new dress for the occasion. When Homer's mother heard this, she called Aunt Aggie and she said, well, we should do something about Uncle Telemachus. You know how men are about clothes. They can hardly tell one dress or suit from another. The next day, they dragged Uncle Tully downtown and they picked out a nice, new, and very becoming plaid suit for him. The sheriff said, if they're going to make a fashion show out of this thing, I can dress up too. He sent away special delivery to Chicago and ordered an expertly fashioned double-breasted Hollywood model suit. On the day before the fair started, Homer went up to Mr. Terwilliger's with the sheriff to see them take her ball of string out of the house. Mr. Olson, the carpenter, had to take out the side of the house because the ball just would not fit through the door. When the moving men rolled it out and onto the truck, the sheriff said, oh, that's as pretty a ball of string as I've ever seen. It's got a woman's touch. And here's the picture, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the picture. Look at that. Look at the size of that ball of string. And the dogs were watching, and Mr. Terwilliger's watching. Everybody's watching. Wow. Just then, Uncle Telemachus walked up, and he agreed. It's awful pretty being all colors of the rainbow, but it ain't wound tight. It's so soft you can poke your fist right into it. Yeah, but yarn stretches pretty much, said the sheriff unhappily. The day the fair opened, the grandstand was crowded, and people stood halfway around the track when the contestants and their assistants started unrolling their string. Miss Terwilliger's new pink dress and the sheriff's and Uncle Tully's new suits caused much favorable comment from the ladies present. The men were more interested in the string, but as Homer's mother said, they can hardly tell one dress or suit from another. Miss Terwilliger and the sheriff and Uncle Tully, they were hot and tired after the first 2 times around the track, and so were their assistants. So the judge had some of the regular county fair employees roll the balls while the contestants rode around the track alongside in the sheriff's car. And here's a picture. Here's a picture of that, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. There's the big top in the background and the Ferris wheel and the racetrack and the grandstand, which is packed, and the racetrack itself and the balls of string and the sheriff's car. And oh gosh, is that Uncle Telemachus gesticulating? Oh, we'll see. We'll see. After the first afternoon's unrolling, Miss Terwilliger's ball measured 5 feet 9 inches. The sheriff's measured 5 feet and 8 3/4. Uncle Telly's 5 feet 8 inches. Uncle Telly and the sheriff were very uneasy. At the end of the second day, the sheriff's and Miss Terwilliger's measured 5 feet. Uncle Telemachus's 4 feet 11 and 15. 4 feet 11 and 15/16 inches. Uncle Telly felt a little better, and so did the sheriff. The measurements at the end of the next to the last day of the fair were Uncle Telly and the sheriff running 16.5 inches and Miss Terwilliger only 12 5/8 inches, and each contestant's ball of string had unrolled around the track 99 times. Uncle Telly and the sheriff were feeling pretty confident now, and each one was sure of winning the title of world's champion string saver and the hand of clever Miss Terwilliger. On the last day of the contest, everybody in Center County was on hand early. The contestants were going to roll their balls of string around the track themselves. The sheriff and Uncle Telly were all dressed up for the occasion, but Miss Terwilliger was not wearing the new knit dress. The ladies noticed right away. She was wearing the old robin's egg blue one that she had saved all these years. She started off carrying her ball in a gay little basket and a parasol to protect her from the autumn sun. She marched right off at 2 o'clock with her string trailing behind her. Most everybody knew that Miss Terwilliger's ball was 3 3/8 inches less across than the sheriff's or Uncle Telly's, and they admired her confidence and her spirit, but they all knew she couldn't win. And here's the picture, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the picture. Look at that. There's Miss Terwilliger walking ahead, carrying her parasol, wearing her robin's egg blue dress and her ball of string in that basket. And behind her there is the sheriff and Uncle Telemachus in his very sporty plaid suit. And they are keeping an eye on one another, ladies and gentlemen. They're keeping an eye on one another. Oh, it's coming down to the wire. It's coming down to the wire. Uncle T and the sheriff, each feeling confident, were taking it slow. They watched each other like hawks, and they unwound their string right up against the fence, and they checked on each other's knots. They hadn't even gotten a quarter of the way around when Miss Terwilliger was at the halfway mark. Homer could see her walking right along, wearing her robin's egg blue dress with the pink trim at the bottom, carrying her basket and that parasol to protect her from the autumn sun. The sheriff and Telly were halfway around, still checking every knot and stretching their string as tight as they dared against that fence. Now, Miss Terwilliger was 3/4 of the way around, still walking right along, wearing her robin's egg blue blouse with the pink skirt, carrying her basket and the parasol to protect her from the autumn sun. Uncle Telly shouted at the 3/4 mark, "I've won! I've won!" The sheriff wound his string around a walnut. "Mine is solid to the core." Everybody started shouting, "Hurrah for Telly! Hurrah for Telly, the world champion string saver!" And after the noise had died down, people heard another shout, "I've won." And then they noticed, for the first time, that Miss Terwilliger was standing right down in front of the grandstand, wearing her dress with the robin's egg blue trim at the neck and sleeves, holding her basket and the parasol to protect her. from the autumn sun. The judge puffed down to where Miss Terwilliger was and held up the end of her string and shouted, "I pronounce you the winner of the title of string-saving champion of the world." Well, then everybody started cheering Miss Terwilliger. Uncle Ulysses and the sheriff trudged up, and they congratulated Miss Terwilliger and told her how glad they were that she had won the championship. Everyone could see, though, that they were unhappy about having to wait forever for her to make up her mind, especially Uncle Telly. Practically every woman who was there that day understood how the clever Miss Terwilliger had won the championship. They enjoyed it immensely, and they laughed amongst themselves, but they did not give away the secret because they thought all is fair in love, and besides, a woman ought to be allowed to make up her own mind. There might have been a few very observing men who, like Homer, knew how she had won, but they didn't say anything. Or maybe they just didn't get around to mentioning it before Miss Terwilliger finally decided to marry Uncle Telly the following week. It was a grand wedding with the sheriff, his best man. Uncle Telemachus and his new wife left for Niagara Falls. While the guests at the reception were still drinking punch and eating wedding cake and donuts, not to mention fried chicken. "That was a a dandy wedding," said the sheriff to Homer while polishing off a chicken breast. He looked at the wishbone and sighed. Here's the picture. He's looking at the wishbone and sighing. Yep. Then, after a minute, he brightened and said, "But they've asked me to dinner every Thursday." "You know, Homer," said the sheriff with a smile, "they'll be a very happy couple, going through life saving string together." "Yep," said Homer. "I guess they are the undisputed champions now." "Well, I guess you're right, Homer. Nobody will ever get so much string saved on one ball as they have. Heck, I think I'll start saving paper bags or bottle caps." All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is Mystery Yarn. Now, next week, nothing new under the sun, hardly. Oh, that's the story about the better mousetrap. It's going to be good, ladies and gentlemen. Join us over on YouTube. I can see everybody's comments. Betty Sue is on Rambles Where the Noise. Oh, Roots, Rails, and Rambles. John Wilhelm is here for the clever antidotes. Catherine Fisher is here. KS, she says most balls of string live in junk drawers. Does it actually count as string if it doesn't fit in the drawer anymore? Yes, it does. Yes, it does, KS. And John Wilhelm loves jute twine. And we love you all. We'll see you next week. You take good care. You take good care, and you go see Miss Betty Sue if she's in a city near you. All right, with Mr. James McMurtry. Or at the zoo tomorrow with the red pandas. You take good care. Bye-bye.